Hey everyone, welcome back to the Hard4Games channel. I'm Tony, and again, today we are talking about the Pokemon Center in New York. In our last episode, we revealed that we had the internals of the previously lost and thought to be destroyed Gotta Catch 'em All machine. Essentially one of 4 kiosk stations where customers could get event Pokemon distributed to them. Now, if you have not watched the first episode, I recommend that you do. I consider it essential information for going into this one. I will put a link in the description and in a card above. So today we are covering details we didn't cover last time. They're equally important to that information, but these are a little bit more next level. Essentially, we had to sort of introduce the idea of and history of the Pokemon Center in New York first before we could dive into more sort of campaign information, for example. And in addition to campaign info, RetroAli, my project partner in this, has been talking to verified primary sources, i.e. former employees of the Pokemon Center in New York. And she's been able to get them to independently verify information and questions she had regarding the center's operations, policies, and demise. So we are in for a treat. Let's get going.
Hey Tony, so if you guys don't know me, I am RetroAli. I create videos and I stream a bunch of Nintendo and Pokemon and retro gaming related content over on my channel. So the past couple months working on this project have been a huge whirlwind, and not only have we uncovered a lot on the technical side of things, but we've also gotten a ton of information about the history and the day-to-day of PCNY. So I interviewed 3 different primary sources over the course of the past couple months, and now we're here to go in depth on everything that we've learned since the last video. So without further ado, let's get into the history of PCNY.
This is Hard4Games. They're Hard4Games. They become hard. They're Hard4Games.
So the Pokemon Center New York was completely run by Pokemon USA, and it was overseen by the Pokemon Company in Japan. As you all probably know, Pokemon experienced a large boom in popularity, aka Pokemania, in Generations 1 and 2, and then by the time Generation 3 rolled around, it kind of had a little bit of a decline in mainstream popularity. And this decline in popularity of the series really played a significant part in the store's decline, among other things. So the store started to become an unnecessary expense for Pokemon USA over time, and they were locked into a 15-year lease with the Rockefeller Center. They'd invested so much into the store and it wasn't performing well as they expected it to. They thought the store was going to do as well as the Japanese Pokemon centers, which it didn't. So Pokemon USA wrote off PCNY as a loss, and Nintendo eventually took over the store with their own employees as to not violate the terms of the lease. Despite popular belief and Nintendo's ties to Pokemon, Nintendo had nothing to do with PCNY and only really fought their way into the store later on. Also, fun fact, if you didn't know, at Nintendo NY, the door handles are Pokeballs, which are a relic from the past from PCNY. Also, it's worth noting that Pokemon USA also had a corporate office in New York as well. So if you're savvy, you might have noticed on the tags of some of the merchandise, the address listed is not the actual store, but it's that office. So something that we didn't cover in the last video that I really wanted to share with you guys is the store mascots. So every single Pokemon Center has its own store mascots, usually like 2 to 3 Pokemon that are meant to represent that specific store. So the store mascots for PCNY were Charizard, Pikachu, and Pichu, and they were shown prominently on exclusive store merchandise. Also, you got your 2 really popular Gen 1 reps, and you got the new Gen 2 baby rep, so that's not a surprising choice. So the PCNY branding and exclusive merch was really heavily influenced by the gold and bronze theme that matched the Rockefeller Center building. So typically, Pikachu and Pichu would be featured riding a Charizard over the New York City skyline, which I think is really awesome. There was everything from statues to pins to shirts, and even a clock that was released that featured these Pokemon and more. Also, side note, if you're into collecting any of this merchandise, it's really hard and rare to find Pokemon Center New York merchandise online. At least the really desirable stuff. We also mentioned in the previous video how it was believed that PCNY had a no photography and no video policy, but we received some mixed answers on this. One employee mentioned that they remembered the policy being in effect, while another employee mentioned how they would regularly take pictures of guests in front of the large Pokemon statues in front of the store. This is a little bit of speculation, but if I had to guess, when the store opened, it had a no photography policy, but by the time Gen 3 rolled around, they got rid of it. This would explain why a lot of the photos that we've received and seen are kids in front of the Gen 3 statues, and we don't really have a lot of pictures from the store from Gen 2. Also, I can confirm that PCNY was a test run to potentially open up more Pokemon centers in the US, But obviously this was scrapped by higher-ups due to the failure of the store after 4 years of operation. As mentioned earlier, the store was not performing as well as they thought it would, and sources say they knew it was a matter of time before the store was going to close. The store really wasn't making enough profit and only had large amounts of visitors on the weekends and for big events. Eventually, once the store was closing, all of the Pokemon Center decor, displays, and statues were removed when it was being converted into Nintendo World. It's unknown where these items are today, but most are thought to be either in storage or destroyed. I can confirm from my sources that most of them were destroyed, though there were some attempts to save some of them. There have also been rumors of employees stealing merchandise from the store, which has been debunked by our primary sources. So in regards to the bulk items found for sale, it mainly had to do with PCNY's online management not wanting to clean up the retail location and deal with the cost of additional warehouse space. Keep in mind that PCNY merch wasn't already selling a lot, so they were sitting on a lot of merchandise. So when staff came in on their last day, the online managers told employees to take whatever they wanted, like a surprise shopping spree. Due to this would explain why so many people have merchandise in bulk and potentially wanted to resell it. However, sources say they wouldn't be surprised if some of the items sold online in bulk were due to theft, since their warehouse was handled by a third party, and boxes of merch would disappear regularly. We can speculate that these were specifically warehouse workers stealing the merchandise versus actual PCNY employees due to the location of the store being in New York and the warehouse being in New Jersey. So a big contributing factor to the store's decline was the amount of money that was invested in the technology in the store and the deterioration of that tech over time. So this is everything from statues to animatronics to all that kind of stuff. Pokemon USA did not want to maintain and upkeep the tech in the store, and it was really too expensive to fix. An example of this, according to sources, is that apparently the carousel on the ceiling of the first floor that has the Pokemon dangling down from it broke right before the grand opening of the store. There were boxes stacked to the ceiling with merchandise, and one of those boxes fell from the second floor and hit the carousel enough to bend the track. It always squeaked after that, and it wore out way faster than it was supposed to. There was also other tech in the store that was never utilized, like the high score ball. It was apparently blank for over a year and then replaced with a giant ad for whatever events were coming up. Also, the Ultra Pokedex was outdated by the time Gen 3 released, so it was changed to a video loop of Japanese game trailers for upcoming Pokemon titles like Pokemon Coliseum. It was basically just a computer with a big monitor inside of this Pokedex exterior. There were also broken animatronics under the staircase, like a Diglett that was supposed to pop up or a Caesar that was supposed to pinch, stuff like that. Also, according to one of our sources, the Pokeball above the Gotta Catch 'em All machine opened and spit out fog every hour, or at least it was supposed to. It was timed to open every hour, but this meant it also opened at night, so you could see the fog through the windows on the second floor. So this prompted the Rockefeller Center to call the fire department and the store manager at night. You can see where this is going. So then they decided to take the fog out and just have the Pokeball light up and open every hour instead. So the effect really wasn't as special as what you saw in the commercial. So that's all I have regarding the history of PCNY, so back to Tony with more about the distribution machine and the events themselves.
So here's one of the most frequent questions we received both in the comments of the original episode and the live stream we did covering the episode. What is the probability of getting a shiny Pokemon? I'm going to go ahead and hand this one over to Gridlin. He is a member of the Project Pokemon event research team. He's actually the individual who restored and salvaged the Gen 2 campaigns and a few of the Gen 3 campaigns.
So in the last video, we saw Tony get a shiny Entei and a shiny Mew. And that left a lot of people wondering, what are the chances of getting a shiny Pokemon from one of these events? So the short answer is that it varied entirely week to week based on whatever Nintendo decided they wanted to do. But I figured I'd go a little bit into the file structure of what these events might have looked like. So here I have a hex editor open with a snippet of one of the Generation 2 campaigns that we were able to recover. Right in the beginning, you can pretty obviously see that this is for the Celebi SP event, and that this event took place from November 22nd to November 28th in 2002. Over here on the right hand side, you can see 3 PKM1 file headers. These file headers mean that there were 3 potential Pokemon that could be received from this event. The Pokemon you received, its levels, and all of its moves were determined entirely by the values following these PKM1 headers. So these values were mostly index numbers. You can think of an index number kind of like a Pokemon's Pokedex number, or the TM/HM number if it was for a move. In this case, if you take the FB here, this is in hexadecimal, so FB converted from hexadecimal to decimal is 251. 251, as many of you know, is Celebi in the Pokedex. Celebi is the Pokemon you would have received in this event. It's level 5, and these next 4 values are Celebi's moves. So for example, if you converted this 49 from hexadecimal to decimal, you'd get 73. If you look up 73 on a Generation 2 index list for moves, you get the move Leech Seed, and Leech Seed is one of the moves Celebi would have had in this event. This next value over here is the chance out of 1000 of receiving this Pokemon from this event. So here it would be 3D9 in hexadecimal, which is 985 in decimal. So that gives you roughly a 98.5% chance of receiving a Celebi from this event. You may have noticed that the second PKM1 file looks almost exactly the same as the first. The only difference being that this byte here is changed from a 0 to a 1, and that the Celebi only has a 1% chance of being received. And that's because the 0-1 byte is actually what determines if the Pokemon is shiny or not. So this event has a 1% chance of being a shiny Celebi and a 0.5% chance of being a shiny Mew.
So here's a great question that we got during our follow-up live stream. Can you, in the Generation 2 campaigns, bypass the 1 Pokemon per customer rule by switching to a different distribution machine? Let's say you are on A and you go to B, can you get another Pokemon, then go to C, get another Pokemon, or go to Station D, get another Pokemon? There were 4 of them in total. So as we know, Generation 3 had no limit on a hardware or software level in terms of the number of Pokemon you could get. I was able to insert a cart, wait for the animation to complete, eject it, then do it again, and again, and again, and again, and again. Now, I don't know if the staff would have stopped you or if there was anyone stationed there to prevent people from just inserting their cart over and over again. But again, Generation 3 campaigns, at least at a software or hardware level, had no preventative measures from getting multiple Pokemon. This was not the case in Generation 2. Generation 2 had a lockout if you already transferred a Pokemon during a current campaign. It was particularly annoying on my end. I had to insert the cart, wait for it to recognize, run through the animation, transfer the Pokemon, shut down the NR reader, remove the NR disc, start up the NR reader, change the date to a different campaign date, put the NR disc back in the NR reader, boot it back up, put the cart back in, just rinse and repeat over and over again. Not to mention the fact that you had to, empty your party once in a while because it would fill up and you couldn't get additional Pokemon. So the question is could you bypass this whole process with Gen 2, the lockout, by moving to a different machine? And the answer is no. So there's actually a line of code in your save file with PCNY info. And that is what prevents you from getting another Pokemon. Because you insert your cart, the software analyzes the save file, the SRAM, and says, oh, wait, you already received a Pokemon during this campaign, you can't have another one. So it's actually your cartridge, your save file, that prevents you from getting another Pokemon in Gen 2, not the distribution machine or the software. There were a lot of Generation 3 campaigns that we had access to, but first I want to talk about Generation 2, the ones that Gridlin had recovered from memory cards that we had housing Generation 3 campaigns. So basically, I know that sounds a little bit confusing, but there was some remnant data. He was able to take it, say, okay, it's just missing these pieces, boom, Generation 2 campaign restored. The community owes you a debt of gratitude, sir. So here are the names and dates of those campaigns. We have Silver Cave, Union Cave, Johto Legend, Celebi SP. Now, obviously, the first 2 here, Silver Cave and Union Cave, are locations within Generation 2 Gold, Silver, and Crystal. And they all contain Pokemon that are related to those areas. Here are the Pokemon in Silver Cave, including the weight, or probability out of 1,000 of receiving one. Here's the same thing for Union Cave. Now, earlier I mentioned that the Pokemon here are related to those areas. So most of these you can find in those particular caves. Mareep, I think it's pronounced Mareep? I don't know. Mareep is related. It's not in Union Cave, but sort of on the exterior of the cave. So I guess that Pokemon just kind of gets a Pass. I don't know why they added it in, maybe just to round out the roster of that particular campaign. Maybe it was just a preference or a favorite among one of the staff members. I have no idea. Now, Johto Legend is particularly interesting. The chances of getting a shiny here are 100%. In normal campaigns, as Griddlin had mentioned, they are super rare, like they are within the games themselves. But here, you're guaranteed to not only get a shiny, but you're treated to a full, nice animation as well. Now, Griddlin had talked a little bit about Celebi SP Week. During this week, I only had ever received a Celebi because the chances of getting anything else were really rare. Now, according to Ali's source, the Celebi Week was designed to correspond with the film Pokémon Forever, which starred a Celebi. The movie was released October 11th, 2002, and the event came out about a month later, so just a little bit of a delay there. Now, it's interesting since, other than other official events, Gen 2 players, specifically Pokemon Crystal players, couldn't get a Celebi without a cheat device, like a Game Genie, for example. In Japan, gamers could be gifted a GS Ball via the Pokemon Mobile System GB, which would trigger the Celebi event in Crystal. But without it, getting a Celebi in Crystal was just not possible, and we didn't have that in the US. Let's switch over to hardware and talk about the writer. Now, last time we discussed the following details. The writer is required for a transfer, and you cannot swap it out for a regular Game Boy Advance, even though it seems to be based on and a function akin to a Game Boy Advance. Right now, the writer is actually in the hands of Project Pokemon, and they're attempting to understand what makes it tick. And fun fact, when it boots and loads the game, it actually does make a little tick sound. So that's actually a very apt description that I just mentioned there. We did try to emulate the distribution program on a GameCube and on a Wii. Program will work. However, the writer will not boot. It's recognized, the loading sequence begins, but as you can see, it never completely boots on anything other than an NR reader. Of course, none of this would be an issue if a GBA could double as a writer. And here's what happens when you plug in a GBA to controller port 4. It recognizes, it begins to load, but similarly, it never boots. And that is on a Wii, on a GameCube, or on an NR writer. It just will never complete the booting process. It will not function and write anything. And speaking of the Game Boy Advance, I want to make a little bit of a correction from last time. I mentioned that it was purely aesthetic and not required for the transfer. That is only half true. It is not required for the transfer if you have access to a GameCube controller. But the customers at PCNY did not have access to a GameCube controller because the NR reader was tucked away within the sort of kiosk station thing that it was housed in. So the Game Boy Advance, you could actually press a button and begin the transfer sequence. So I was sort of half incorrect on that. Like I mentioned before, the writer is now in the hands of Project Pokemon, and they are figuring it out. What I did initially in terms of trying to dissect it was somewhat limited, but here's what I did. First off, I dumped the BIOS of the writer, which we expected to be different from a regular Game Boy Advance BIOS. It was not different, it was the same, which makes it even more confusing as to why it functions differently than a Game Boy Advance when you would expect it to function the same. Secondly, I was able to just merely provide glimpses of the internals of the writer, the board, the chips, etc. So this writer says of version 2. Interesting note, the previous version used to distribute Generation 2 was modeled after the Game Boy Color, not the Game Boy Advance, as one might imagine. According to a former employee, the transition to Gen 3 did cause us a problem, as the station was built solely on Game Boy Color slots and not GBA. So the station at one time was under construction for the GBA slot and the screen display. As you may notice from the Game Boy Color distribution screen, it was in portrait mode and not landscape. The screen had to be adjusted as landscape for the GBA presentation, so all four had to be adjusted. That's A, B, C, and D. Of course, the biggest change would be the Game Boy Color slot to GBA. The entire process took many months after the launch of Ruby and Sapphire, but it was ready by the time Pokemon Coliseum was available. And another fun note, earlier distribution events seemed to use a Super Nintendo and Super Game Boy combination to distribute Pokemon. So now I want to talk about the Restored Generation 3 campaigns. I was originally thinking, I would cover all of the Generation 3 campaigns there were, but then I realized I don't know how many of you would sit through all of that. There's a good amount there. So instead I'm going to put some information in the description below regarding that, and you can check it out sort of on your own time and at your leisure. But the restored campaigns that Gridlin had salvaged, let's go ahead and get started on those. So first off, we have Evolve Stone, a campaign lasting from August 30th, my daughter's birthday by the way, 2003 to September 4th, 2003, so not very long. This event featured Pokemon that require an evolution stone to evolve. Here's who was included and their weight, i.e. their percentage of being received, out of 1,000. Note that Pokemon received here would come holding the evolution stone required. Next up we have Monster Week. Dark and Ghost types here. This event ran from October 18th, 2003 through October 24th, 2003, which is a real shame because they could have just extended it to Halloween, right? Monster Week? Monster Month? Could have been. Maybe they had something else going on for Halloween that was special. I don't know, but it just seems kind of like a missed opportunity. I don't know, kind of strange. They didn't add a couple days onto the end of it. Whatever. No held items here, just ghastly Pokemon. And speaking of Generation 3 restoration, here's a quick note from Gridlin regarding the Japanese distribution.
Another fun fact worth mentioning is that the Generation 3 PCNY distribution software is the exact same distribution software that was used during several early Japanese Gen 3 Jirachi events. And interestingly enough, the Generation 3 PCNY disc is a Japanese GameCube disc. There is also a configuration file on the disk with a language parameter, and all you have to do is set that parameter value to 2 and the language of the disk becomes Japanese. So now that we have the software that was used for these events, and we have a good understanding of the file structure that was used for the campaign memory cards, we have the potential to faithfully recreate these early Japanese Generation 3 events that otherwise would have been lost to time.
So thank you everybody for watching. This project has been super intense and just so many people have been involved to thank. I really appreciate each and every one of you, starting with RetroAli. Really brought the community together, did so much research, was just a great project partner with this. I really appreciate it. And if all of you like Pokemon, which I assume you do because you're watching this, you should check her out because that's a good chunk of what she does. Check her out on Twitch, YouTube, social. You will enjoy it, I promise. I also want to thank Project Pokemon. They went above and beyond on a technical level in terms of preservation and cataloging all of this stuff. Just really appreciate it, and I just want to give a big shout out to all of you guys. And of course, I want to thank the team over at pokemoncenternewyork.com. They have a website where they've just done a ton of research on the center, and if you're interested in learning more above and beyond the Gotta Catch 'em All machine, that is a really good place to go for information. And lastly, on my end, you may recall that we had some save files linked in the description of our original video. Well, we have some new save files in this video, so please enjoy. Destroy that grayish black market of people trying to sell the Pokemon Center New York Pokemon for insane amounts of money. Flood the market. Flood it. Enjoy.
So thank you guys so much for watching this video. This has been a crazy long project with so many people involved that I not only want to thank Tony, our anonymous lender, everybody over at pokemoncenternewyork.com, and our primary sources that I got to interview, but especially the crew that we've been working with over at Project Pokemon, who have helped us so much with preserving this long-lost distribution machine. This whole thing would not have been possible without them, especially this video specifically, since we've dived so much into the tech side of it. And also, all of them over there are really cool dudes. Like Tony mentioned, this is the most in-depth research I think we've both probably done for a project, so hopefully our hard work and passion for PCMY and game preservation really shines through with this. Especially me, with being a giant Pokemon fan, this is one of the coolest things I've ever gotten to work on personally. And I know there are a lot of other people out there like me that really care and appreciate the history and preservation of PCMY, just like we do, so I'm glad all of our information and research is out there for everyone to see, because this stuff is important. So again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you around.
They're Hard4Games.